I've been talking a lot about defense mechanisms, and the funny part about it is I just laughed, and in some cases, laughter is a defense mechanism. Usually against something that is like exceedingly fucked up, something that happened in somebody's life that messed them up, that caused them a lot of pain, and they utilize laughter to defend themselves against the reality of that pain. Defense mechanisms are so fascinating, they really are. But I think what's most fascinating to me about them is just how often they are utilized by people, right? You have defense mechanisms like what I just talked about, laughing, usually at something that was really messed up that happened in somebody's life, right? You have defense mechanisms of projections, right? Giving your shit to somebody else. So basically, that violates somebody else's personal boundaries. Maybe you are verbally assaulting them. Maybe you're saying something really indecent. You have displacement when you look at something in your life that maybe you regret, right? And you look at somebody else and you're like, how could you have done that? Kind of goes like that. You have sublimation. Sublimation is fascinating because sublimation is what artists utilize, as a defense mechanism. From what I understand, it's one of the healthier defense mechanisms. There's also a matter of like sublimating pain through kind of like causing somebody else potential pain as well. It's just fascinating, literally so fascinating. Defense mechanisms, the entire universe that is defense mechanisms. But the more that I look at it, when you understand defense mechanisms and understand how they work, right, it's more easy to see how they play out in other people's lives. And, I'm not a total expert in this. I am still learning, of course, but I think that I'm seeing these things in other people's lives, including my own as well. I'm very aware of myself. I'm very aware of my defense mechanisms. And it's fascinating, for instance, an example, OCD as a defense mechanism. One of the most common forms of OCD is excessively washing your hands, right? And it's fascinating because that can manifest as a result of having an intrusive thought, right? So how do you defend against the intrusive thought? Well, you wash away maybe the shame, right? And so you're kind of like utilizing that as a channel to get rid of the shame. But, it's not that defense mechanisms are good or bad, right? It is a matter of like healthy versus unhealthy. That's definitely something to look at. But really, what I'm so fascinated by is let's look at denial, right? A defense mechanism in terms of denial would be, somebody goes into a job interview, right? And they get rejected, right? And so they storm out in a tantrum and they're like, you know what? I didn't want it anyway. Denial. They're denying the fact that they actually did want it, but they got rejected, and that hurts their gentle, super sensitive ego, right? And that just really messes them up. Defense mechanisms are so fascinating, and even like I myself have found myself utilizing denial, because there's pain. Oftentimes, what this is all about is avoiding or trying to reduce pain. That's another, reason that a defense mechanism is utilized. But what I'm really fascinated by is the capacity for an individual to actually go in to the pain and really just be with it, right? Let down their guard, let down their defenses, and just be with the fucking pain. Because if there's something that I've learned about pain, it's that it's just fucking pain, and that is really why defense mechanisms are utilized, is because of pain. Pain is challenging to deal with. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not. Just because it's fucking pain does not mean that it's not challenging to deal with. It is. We're all human. I am no more or less human than anybody else, right? I have my shit. We all do. But really, defense mechanisms are fascinating, right? You know, like you imagine somebody, and what me laughing is not a defense mechanism right now. It's just me thinking about something. So, like, imagine somebody goes into a job interview, right? They get rejected, right? So they're in denial, right? Oh, I didn't want it anyway. Fuck that job. Fuck those people, right? All right, you're trying to defend yourself against the reality of the pain, right? And then maybe you go have lunch with somebody that you know, right? And then you project onto them, right? Maybe you say something really rude to them. Maybe you say something really mean to them. You're projecting your own insecurity. You just came out of a job interview where you were rejected. You really wanted the job, but you're in denial, right? You're in denial that you didn't get it. You're in denial of the pain that you're feeling. You're in denial of everything, right? And so that insecurity is painful, right? You're now insecure about yourself because you didn't get the job that you really wanted, right? And so therefore then, because it's so difficult to sit with that pain, that insecurity, you know, you got rejected and everything, right? It's so difficult to sit with that. What are you going to do? You're going to utilize another defense mechanism. You're going to project that pain because you don't want to deal with it out onto the person that you're with, right? And then you're going to fuck up your relationship because that is a lack of healthy boundaries rather than you taking that pain of, fuck, I got rejected and I really wanted that job and, you know, I'm utilizing denial because I'm just a super sensitive person and I hate rejection and, you know, it's just, you know, my day's fucked up. So you're projecting that pain and those strong emotions that it's just more important for you to sit with, you're projecting them onto the person that you're with and you're fucking up that relationship. Then, this is why I say when your entire life is a defense mechanism, then that person looks at you in an unfavorable way and then, you know, they start to think like, oh, this person's not good for me. They don't have healthy boundaries, right? And so then that person decides to distance themselves, right? And not really long story short, but kind of just like to like continue down the line, you know, maybe that person decides that they don't want to be friends with the person who didn't get the job because they're projecting and they see that because maybe they have self-awareness and that's important, right? And so then that even more so contributes to this person's insecurity, right? Which then further down the line continues the cycle of more and more defense mechanisms, which maybe it's still projection again, or maybe this time it's displacement, right? Maybe this person really regrets ever saying what they said to that person because it was just in a heated moment where they were really upset about something, right? And then they lost the relationship, right? And so then therefore that person with another person displaces their own pain, you know? And they're like, well, if you didn't say this thing to that person, then that person wouldn't have left and this wouldn't have happened and you wouldn't be feeling bad right now. Displacement, right? It's just so fascinating. It's so fascinating how often we utilize defense mechanisms. And, you know, when it comes to emotional maturity or a lack thereof, right? Some people have more of a challenging time sitting with things than others, right? If you think it's the absolute end of the fucking world, the pain that you have to deal with, it's probably likely that you're going to try to give that pain to somebody else in the form of projection, displacement, whatever it is, right? Because you just don't want to deal with it, right? And so that becomes a defense mechanism in and of itself. Now, emotionally mature people, they have much more of a sense of self-awareness. They have a sense of healthier boundaries. And so then, therefore, it's more easy for them to, not only easy, but more efficient, more productive, more, there's more depth there for them to, I said depth, by the way, for them to just take it on themselves. What can I learn from this, right? Oh, I didn't get the job. That really fucking hurt. What can I learn from this? Oh, maybe I need to be more attentive to the position. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that defense mechanisms, depending on what they are, they can really fuck up your relationships, right? Sublimation is, from what I understand, the healthiest defense mechanism out there. But these other ones, like, it's just so fascinating when people utilize them, why people utilize them, and just how they can impact your relationships, right? Like, if somebody else doesn't know themselves well enough and you project your own pain onto them, and they don't really have healthy boundaries, so they don't really have that sense of differentiation between self and other, my stuff, your stuff, you're not going to give me your stuff, I know the difference between my stuff and your stuff, so, people who have that self-awareness tend to be more successful in relationships. I just find it so fascinating how often defense mechanisms are utilized, like literally regularly. How often somebody laughs at their own trauma because it's too fucking painful to deal with in a healthier way. How often people project their own pain onto somebody else because it's too painful for them to sit with it. How often people displace their own regretful fucking life decisions because it's too painful for them to sit with. How often people utilize denial. Oh, I didn't fucking want it anyway. Oh, I didn't fucking need it anyway. Oh, fuck all those people. Because it's painful that they got rejected. It's wild how often defense mechanisms are utilized.